only has in-house counsel of Warif, and she's working at CUDA or with CUDA, but that you're a good friend of hers.
Yes, can you imagine that?
Because everything came together very nicely, as it were.
Yes, it did. It did. It did. Okay, so we're going to start in a minute.
Hi there, Wemi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So good to have you all here. Good afternoon to all our panelists and all the attendees. We're glad to have you all here this afternoon. So I'm going to start very quickly by just introducing Kuda Bank, Warif, and this entire campaign and what it's all about. So Kuda Bank, as we all should know, or if we don't know, we're about to find out, is a free digital-only bank licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria, and it's known as the Bank of the Free. So if you need to be free, Kuda Bank is the bank for you. We provide banking services free of account maintenance fees, card maintenance fees, and withdrawal fees at over 3,000 ATMs across Nigeria. The bank also gives 25 free transfers every month and a free debit card delivered free of charge. So we help you spend less. And you can find out more about Kuda at kudabank.com or download the app at the Google Play or the App Store. So why this campaign? You know, why all this? I'm sure that all of us have heard about all the atrocious things that are going on around in our society and all over the world concerning rape and abuse. And so we decided that this was a very, very important topic to cover. Kuda advocates very strongly for issues that we and our community care about, and that's why we have collaborated with Warif to dismantle the rape culture in Nigeria, and we really pray that we can do that. So let's talk about Warif. Warif is an amazing organization. It's Women at Risk International Foundation. It's a non-profit organization that was founded in 2016 in response to the high incidence of sexual assault, rape, and human trafficking that occurs amongst young girls and women across Nigeria. The foundation seeks to redress the adverse effects seen as the result of gender-based violence. And this partnership came up because we also wanted to start a fund. So there's a fund called Kuda Bank End Rape Fund, and it's an independent relief fund for organizations that are fighting at the front line to end rape and the rape culture in Nigeria. So far, we have donated 200,000, and we're currently also running a crowdfunding where people continue to donate. So we would love for you guys to donate as well. The website is endrape.kudabank.com, and anybody can donate to Warif via this link. And all donations will be used to fight all forms of sexual misconduct and to provide support for sexual misconduct survivors. So that's it for the intro. Once again, welcome everyone, and thank you all for being here. So I'm going to do a quick intro of the panelists, just a very brief intro of them. And then each of the panelists is going to speak for a few minutes, and then we're going to have a Q&A from the audience. So all those that are attending, you should have a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen where you can enter in any questions at all that you have for any of the panelists. I would love to, you know, cover as many questions as possible. So please enter all your questions in. Okay, so we're going to jump right into the intro of these amazing, absolutely fantastic panelists. Can we give them some virtual claps, please? Virtual claps for Dr. Da Silva of Warif, Jimmy Odukoya, Yemi Adebibe, Tosin Oyetade. If you guys don't give virtual claps, we're not going to move on. We need some virtual claps. Thank you so much, guys, for all being here. We're so glad to have you. Okay, so let's do what we need to do and introduce you guys one by one. Ooh, this is a mouthful because we have a whole bunch of awesome, you know, profiles here. Okay, so let's start with Dr. Kemi. Dr. Kemi is so many things. You know, she's the founder of Warif. She's a specialized OBGYN doctor. She has a medical background which extends to public health. She's a qualified and experienced specialist since 2002. She has worked in Lagos for over 10 years and has her private practice. And she does a lot of work with gender-based violence, so much work that she deserves a gazillion virtual clap. So please give her a round of applause for that. She graduated from the College of Medicine, University of Lagos, and completed her postgraduate training in OBGYN at Howard University in Washington, D.C. She also has a master's in public health degree. Excellent. Very, very nice to have you here with us, Dr. Kemi. Next, I'm going to introduce Gbemi. So we have Gbemi Sola Ogunrinde, who is a professional counselor who seeks to help individuals overcome life challenges. She conducts individual therapy, and she also facilitates professional counseling, training, parenting education workshops, and workshops on mental health. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology from Covenant University and a master's degree in family psychology from Harding Simmons University. She is a member of Psy-Chi, the International Honor Society in Psychology. So you guys are amongst great company here. She's also a member of the Canadian Association for Child and Play Therapy. Hey, wow. I never even knew that there was such a thing. I'm going to talk to you after, Gbemi, please. Child and play therapy, I love that. And she's been trained in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy for working with troubled children. Gbemi serves as one of the counselors at WARIF, and let's give her some virtual claps as well for being such an awesome, awesome lady and doing this great work. Next, we have Yemi Aderibibe. Yemi is a senior associate at Templars, a leading Nigerian law firm, and legal advisors to both Kuda Bank and WARIF. She's got extensive experience as a corporate and commercial lawyer, regularly advising Nigeria and international corporates across various sectors, including oil and gas, FMCG, financial services, media and entertainment, and technology. She's a key member of the corporate social responsibility team at Templars. Amongst other projects, she provides support to WARIF and other NGOs on legal issues arising in connection with gender-based violence, pro bono representation, and support of victims of domestic violence and related human rights issues. When she's not lawyering, she spends most of her time equipping teenagers for life and volunteering on several social platforms. Let's give Yemi some virtual claps and welcome her as well. Welcome, Yemi. Next, we have Temi Otedola. Temi is an actress, media personality, and content creator. Temi launched jtofashion.com, a fashion and lifestyle blog, in 2016. JTO Fashion was able to cultivate Temi's position as a recognized fashion influencer who brought high-end fashion together with the best of West Africa's design. With her start as a fashion blogger, her career has moved into acting, TV presenting, magazine contribution, and various ambassadorial roles. She has recently signed with WARIF as their youth ambassador. Welcome, Temi. Let's give her some virtual claps as well. Last but not the least, we have the bravest person on this panel, Mr. Jimmy Odukoya, who is a gentleman amongst many lovely women. Jimmy is an actor, musician, a relationship coach, and a motivational speaker. He's a fun-loving, multi-talented individual who has a passion for family, life, and humanity. He's a driven individual who always strives to be the best at everything that he does. He graduated top of his MBA class and was the recipient of numerous academic awards from the prestigious Oral Roberts University. He very recently took a stand against rape with the Men Against Rape campaign, which he was very actively involved in. Let's give Jimmy some amazing virtual claps for all that. Thank you, Jimmy, for starting that campaign. That's fantastic to see men joining this discussion. Okay, so now that we've gotten all that in, over to you guys. So everybody has about 7 minutes to speak. You know, just talk about, you know, whatever it is on your heart to talk about, and then we will open up to the Q&A. So if anybody has any questions as they speak, please type your questions into the Q&A box. Over to you, Dr. Da Silva. We could start with you. Over to you.
Okay, well, first I want to start with thanking you, Felicia, for such a kind introduction. And I want to also acknowledge our partners, Kuda Bank, because we couldn't have made this possible. And all of us come together today to have this very important conversation without them. The topic that we're discussing, dismantling the rape culture in Nigeria, is one that I believe recently more and more people are having. And the reason behind this is because at the end of the day, we're dealing with what we refer to in the space as a national crisis. To understand gender-based violence in the context of Nigeria, you have to appreciate the magnitude of the problem. We're dealing with a problem that in a country of 200 million people affects 25% of the female population that make up half of the population of Nigeria. So every 1 in 4 girls before the age of 18 would experience at least one violent sexual encounter. And when you look at 1 in 14 girls between the ages of 15 and 49 would also have had some various form of a violent encounter perpetrated against them. Currently, with the COVID-19 pandemic and the mandatory lockdowns, that we've experienced, not just in Nigeria, but globally across many countries, we've noticed what's referred to as a shadow pandemic. This is a spike in the number of cases of domestic and sexual violence perpetrated against girls and women. And this is because more and more women are trapped at homes with their abusers. And so therefore, there's a likelihood of more encounters to occur. The UN estimates that on average, we're anticipating as high as a 20% increase in the number of these cases. At the organization, in the first 2 weeks of the lockdown, we experienced a 64% spike in the number of calls made from women who are at risk. So to understand what we do at WARIF is to appreciate that when you're an NGO working in the gender-based space, you're playing an integral part in addressing the issues against violence, but also the protection of women's rights. And to achieve this, WARIF has adopted a unique approach referred to as the WARIF approach. This approach, entirely survivor-centered, measures and implements impactful initiatives that are designed across 3 pillars: our health, our education, and our community service. With our health pillar, we develop comprehensive health services at our Rape Crisis Center in Yaba. This is a functioning medical center. It offers immediate medical therapy, forensic medical examinations, HIV tests, gives prophylactic drugs when they're needed, also offers psychosocial counseling, which I'm sure Gwemi is going to spend some time discussing, and then it addresses social welfare. So it looks at the shelter, the legal aid, as well as the vocational skills so that a woman's socially and financially empowered when she leaves the WARIF Center. We also offer a 24-hour confidential helpline because we're living in an environment where rape is stigmatized, where women are not allowed to come forward and speak their truth. And so less women are seen at centers where services can be offered to them because of the hypocrisy of the community, victim or survivor blaming her. So therefore she stays away. We offer all of our services free of charge. With the educational pillar, we address the promotion of the needs of the girl child through education. So we have implemented educational programs to address her protection and to prevent violence from occurring. And these are implemented in both the secondary level as well as tertiary level university programs. And in addition to this, we've also found that it is beneficial and necessary to include boys and men in the conversation. I guess this is where Jimmy comes in. And so what we've established is, in addition to programs targeting just the girl child, it was critical for us to implement programs that emphasize the role of the boy child in the conversation and in the gender-based violence space. In community, we offer community service programs, both in rural and urban settings. In the rural setting, it's important to identify trustworthy, committed residents that we refer to as gatekeepers, and they typically would have spheres of influence. And these are typically health professionals like traditional midwives or traditional rulers. And we go into these settings and we sensitize and train them so they become first responders to gender-based violence. In more urban settings, the emphasis is on the police force, in appreciating that the police need to be sensitized when it comes to addressing a rape survivor. And so by changing that protocol and sensitizing them, then we're hopefully reducing the prevalence as well as increasing the accountability, because more and more women will feel more reassured in reporting cases of rape. In addition to these core areas, other aspects that WARIF focus on is advocacy in addressing the suitable bills and policies that need to be put in place. And I'm sure Oyeyemi is probably going to spend some more time on the legal ramifications of this. The collation and the actual monitoring of data is also an important aspect that we place a lot of emphasis on, so that we can use this to monitor trends and patterns in gender-based violence. And this essentially helps us in creating these programs that we not only measure, but we find to be impactful. And then finally, we create awareness. And awareness creation is beyond just the programs that we implement. Awareness creation also comes in the form of campaigns. It comes in the form of physical marches, like again, Jimmy will probably spend some time discussing with us his recent march with the other men. It also comes with online campaigns that Temi spent a lot of time with, because social injustices now are being witnessed on a grand stage. And with the use of social media under the banner of hashtags, we can actually start to change these systemic problems like gender-based violence. So all of this we work, but we work not in silos, but in collaborations and partnerships. So we work with other NGOs, ensuring that we're not reinventing the wheel, ensuring that we're actually advocating in areas that need advocating. We work also in partnerships with other governmental agencies, like the law enforcement and so on, ensuring that accountability is also a key aspect that is addressed. We work with state governments to ensure that, as I said, these updated and cohesive bills are actually implemented, not just discussed. And then finally, we work in the private sector because it's necessary for us to raise not just the funding and the technical capacity so that we can successfully implement the program, but that we can make sure that the community is aware that this is a collective responsibility. But we're far from done, Felicia. There is so much work to be done because of the sheer magnitude of the problem. So for us to actually achieve that sustainable developmental goal of gender equality and empowerment of women, it is critical that we continue to work together and join forces. And then on a final note, we must commit to enabling and empowering women to play a role in all spheres of influence. And this includes social, cultural, political, economic, because they relate to issues in the country, and we must be allowed to play a direct role, especially in the area that affects women, which is the violence perpetrated daily against girls and women in Nigeria. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for that very powerful and information-packed opening, Dr. Da Silva. Can we give her some virtual claps for that? I mean, the work that you're doing at WARIF is absolutely commendable. And I'm so glad that you spoke about partnership, because it's so important that everybody on here understands that all of us together can put an end to the madness. Thank you so much for that very powerful opening and for the great work that you're doing with your team. Okay, in line with that flow, let's have Gbemi up next. And then after Gbemi, then we'll have Yemi, then we'll have Jimmy, then we'll have Temi. All right, thank you. Over to you, Gbemi.
Very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be on here. So picking up from where Dr. Da Silva even left off, talking about the damages that rape does to a survivor, I would like to speak that you don't necessarily have to have a first-hand experience with a survivor for you to try to imagine the kind of it could have on anyone. It's a traumatic experience that leads the survivors in a place.
Sorry to interrupt you, Gbemi. Your audio is quite low. We can't hear you very well. So can you either speak a bit louder, or maybe you can move your device closer to you, because we can't hear you too well.
All right, then. Is this better?
Much better, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank
you.
you.
Like I was saying, that you don't necessarily have to have a first-hand experience with a survivor for you to try to imagine, how the impact of getting raped could have on anyone. It's a traumatic experience on a survivor, which affects them long-term. Some people have short-term issues that they have to deal with. So these effects is different with every survivor. Yeah, as much as there are similar effects that working with survivors constantly, you find out that there are similar symptoms, there are similar effects that they all deal with. But the truth is, no two survivors have the exact same experiences. But just on a general look now, looking at how the rape affects each survivor, it affects them in three main areas. We talk about the psychological aspect, the physical aspect, and the behavioral aspect. When it comes to the psychological aspect, it affects them emotionally. You find out that someone who's been raped, all of a sudden, is exhibiting negative emotions. They're constantly angry at themselves, angry at the world. Sometimes they don't even know what they're angry about. And then you have those that are sad, persistently experiencing feelings of sadness. And it's usually from, experiencing this persistent sadness that some people, when there is no intervention, eventually dive into that period, that place of depression, when they have to deal with negative emotions, they have to deal with flashbacks, because this was something that happened to them. So every now and then they're experiencing flashbacks. They're having trouble sleeping at night because they're having nightmares. And the nightmares come so strong, almost as if they're currently in that, threatening situation. And they wake up feeling as if they are threatened. So these things keep happening. They can't sleep at night. For some, they can't even eat. They lose their appetite. And all these things, then they begin to withdraw from people around them because they just don't want to be around people. And it makes it difficult for even loved ones to know how to help. So the damage doesn't just affect the survivors themselves, it also affects their relationships and the loved ones in their lives. So you talk about them becoming paranoid. There's, persistent fear. The event happened the last time they went to a certain place. You find out that they begin to avoid that place just because of the memory that it holds, the negative memory that they are trying so hard to forget. Some survivors get to a point where they begin to experience a sense of helplessness because when the rape was perpetrated, that's how they felt. So they begin to see themselves in a negative light. Some of them become hopeless. They don't see anything good about themselves. They walk around in shame, and the stigma in the media doesn't even help. So they just don't feel, they blame themselves. A lot of them blame themselves, and like people in the society don't help at all when they keep blaming the survivor. Why did she go there? What was she wearing? So this further, reinforces the blame and the guilt that these survivors experience. So when we talk about behavioral effects that it has as well, I talked about isolation earlier on. Then some of them lose interest in things, activities that they used to enjoy doing initially. All of a sudden, they're not just interested. They don't want to hang out with their friends anymore. They just want to be by themselves. Nothing sounds good to them. Nothing sounds fun to them anymore. And then you have the issue of sexual dysfunction. Now, this could be, it's like, there are two extremes to it. So you could have one person who totally becomes averted to anything sexually related. And then you have those who now become sexually promiscuous. When it comes to promiscuity, this is usually common when the sexual abuse, the rape, was experienced as a child and it was repeated. Yes, we're all sexual beings, that part is in it. But when that part of the human being is awakened before time and the person doesn't really know what to do with all the feelings and all the sensations and all of that, next thing you know, that young girl, that young boy, whoever it is, begins to explore whatever it is that they are feeling. And then you find out that they become sexually promiscuous. It's almost like they can't do, without sex, and you're wondering what exactly happened. And then you have those who get married and they're still afraid. They don't want their spouses to touch them because it just reminds them of that traumatic event. So this further leads into relationship difficulties. A lot of people who have survived rape, sexual abuse in one way or another find it difficult. And for a partner who doesn't understand where this person is coming from, there'll be constant rift. Why can't I touch you? All those kind of things. But if you're not patient enough with someone who's gone through rape or any form of sexual violence, you won't be able to understand them because sometimes they don't even understand how they feel. So patience is very, very important, when you have to care for or be with someone who's been sexually abused in some way. And then we talk about the physical damage. This is one everybody can see. We don't get to see the emotional. The behavioral, yes, you can see it in their actions, but the physical, that's what we can clearly see. But the survivors that are, beaten in the process, you can see the bruises. For those who, particularly with children, you can see lacerations and all that in the vaginal area and all of that. And then you talk about infections, STDs, STIs. Imagine somebody who's raped and then is infected with the HIV virus. How that's going to have, it's a long-lasting effect that it's going to have on that person, and that person has to carry that for the rest of their lives. Then the ultimate one that everybody dreads is pregnancy. Imagine getting raped and then getting pregnant. How do you want to live with that? Some people can't even deal. They opt for an abortion and then have to live with the guilt of an abortion. Some go ahead to have the baby, but they resent that child at the end of the day. So it's huge, the effect that, that rape has on an individual. And it's sad that most of the people who perpetrate this act do not sit to think about the impact that their actions will have on a fellow human being. I think if we got to do that every now and then, they will understand that this thing is not right. It's not something that, because I will do it and go away with it. But the person that I've left to deal with all the baggage and everything at the end of the day is not fair. And then you have those who resort to substances because, they've been raped, but they want to try and cope with it, particularly those who don't seek professional help, who don't seek counseling, are looking for how to cope with it. They develop ineffective and unhealthy coping mechanisms. You have some who, begin to depend on substances, alcohol, cigarettes, whatever it is, just to make them feel good. Some people just totally withdraw and they become numb. They don't feel anything anymore, no emotions. There's nothing you want to do or say to them. They can't just be emotionally available anymore. So they're just numb. And sometimes to help them feel alive, that's when, they take substances, they self-harm them just to be sure that, okay, I can still feel. And then, they go back to their default position of being numb. Then you have the aspect of dissociation. This is common with children, particularly if the abuse is repeated. So that child doesn't know how to handle it, is afraid to speak to someone. So how can I cope with this thing that has befallen me? The child just generally dissociates from who they are. So now the body now becomes an object. So whenever this perpetrator comes and does what he or she has to do, the child takes their mind. So when you talk about people having multiple personalities, sometimes that's where it comes from, particularly for children. So they have that, they're still trying to preserve that part of them while they leave the part that has been rubbished by the perpetrator. They leave that part of them and they dissociate from that person. So they don't want to see that person as a part of them. And unfortunately, without intervention, such a child grows up, being dissociated, and you're wondering why sometimes she has a split personality. That's the source of such an issue. So these and many more are the possible damages that getting raped can have on a survivor. And then we have the issue of trust, lastly, particularly if the act was perpetrated by someone that the survivor trusted. If someone I trusted could do this horrible thing to me, then is it really worth trusting anybody? And then they begin to suspect any and everybody that comes into their life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gbemi. Thank you for giving us the extensive breakdown of the damage that it does. And I hope that, all of us know that we all have a part to play in putting an end and a stop to this. Yemi, over to you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Felicia. And thank you, Warif and Kuda Bank, for this opportunity. I think that this subject is not just topical, it is a critical issue, and it's a national emergency, as Dr. Da Silva said. As far back as 2008, rape had been classified as an act of war against humanity. And if you see what the treatment is for other acts of war against humanity, you wonder why rape is still prevalent in our society. I'm supposed to address the issues from a legal perspective, but before I delve into the legal, I'd like to say that law does not exist in a vacuum. You cannot legislate hearts alone. Law can't change hearts and disposition. So there's a critical aspect of it that will enable the effectiveness of our laws, and that's the culture. Now we're saying dismantling rape culture. Now, rape as culture means actions that we endorse. And I personally believe that as a community, we actually endorse rape by the things that we permit, by the things that we allow to happen to the weak and vulnerable amongst us. The children, the women, the mentally disabled, all of those people are vulnerable persons, and culturally, we actually endorse rape. So no matter the legal changes we make, if we do not change culture, it will be difficult for the laws to be effective. Culture like stigma for someone who comes out and says, I've been raped. Culture like hiding and protecting or preventing someone who's been raped from speaking up or exercising their right to report. All of those things are the foundation on which an effective legal system would work. Without getting that work done, the laws will just be a joke. I was looking at other jurisdictions, and Turkey is one of, I mean, it's still prevalent there because it's a global problem, but Turkey, in trying to change their own laws, went as far as doing a 3-year campaign on changing rape culture. So that's how serious we must take it, and it's a cohesive effort. Addressing the laws. I would say that they're the laws as they are now, which are what we have, and then they're the laws that we are looking forward to implementing across board. In Nigeria, the legal system for rape is like day and night. In certain parts, it's really retarded, it's really dated, and in certain parts, it's really progressive. You have the criminal code, which says that only women can be raped, which does not recognize marital rape, which requires corroboration for a rape allegation to stick. And when you put a rape victim under such a heavy burden, you're actually using the law as a weapon to re-victimize the rape victim. So the person who's the victim is brought under the process again. And the person who should be the one facing the law is now the victor or has the protection of the law. And those laws are the criminal code, the penal code in the North, and those laws are as far back as the 1800s, and they haven't been changed. They do not recognize even basic things like the defilement of children is not categorized as rape. So if I rape a child, for instance, I can't say that is rape. It will be considered as defilement. That's how those laws are dated. Then you have another set of laws, which is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law that is only applicable in about 3 or 4 states in Nigeria, and then domestic violence law in Lagos State. Those laws are more up to date. Those laws have upgraded the age or definition of children to 18 years old. They recognize marital rape. They recognize all sorts of domestic violence, even restriction of rights also come under the brackets. Apart from that, comparing both day and night, as I said, the other laws, that's the criminal code and the penal code, even though they have stiff penalties like life imprisonment for rape, those are maximum penalties. So if a judge is not disposed to giving the maximum penalty and decides that, oh, based on the evidence in front of him, just 1 year is sufficient or just 2 years is sufficient, then a perpetrator of rape is able to escape the law because the discretion is given to the judge to impose a maximum penalty. But for the more progressive laws, which are the VAP Act and the domestic violence law, there are minimum penalties. So discretion is given to the officers of the law to impose minimum penalties or exercise their discretion for more. Now, where we are now is, it is very critical that there be a convergence of our laws. You cannot have different actions, different definitions, different scopes, and seek a cohesive response to this kind of national emergency. All I just need to do is be in a Sharia state, and I'm free to do as I like. Whereas in a state like Lagos, there is adequate protection all this, the VAP Act has to be domesticated across all the states in Nigeria. Being the most progressive law that we have,
Okay, looks like we lost Yemi there. Very passionate presentation with lots of facts,
awesome.
lots of, okay. Yemi, we lost you for a second,
yes.
But you're back. Okay, do you just want to quickly close? Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. So we lost you, sorry.
All right.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
Sorry.
Thank you. In terms of the rights of a survivor, I think it's important that survivors know that they have certain rights under the law. One, you have a right to report. You have a right to make a complaint. And you have a right to seek protection. There are protection orders that are legally provided for that survivors can get, and it will be sufficient, it will be given by the court. Another right that I think that is not properly exercised is the right of the community to protect the rape victim. Health officers, policemen can request for protection orders for victims. And it's important that as a community, we come together to ensure that that is done. Where do we need to be? One, we need to change these disparate legal provisions and ensure that we have a cohesive legal system. And I think that the most progressive law we have now is the VAP Act. So it is very important that we come as a pressure group to push for the domestication of the VAP Act across all states in Nigeria. Number two, I think at this point, it is important that we have rape courts. You can't have something that is so critical go through the lengthy, unwieldy process of the judicial process in Nigeria. I think it's important that the same way you have specific subject matter courts for commercial issues, there is a court directly focusing on rape victims and protecting them. Let's listen to what Gemi had to say. All that damage is significant. If you have a bucket of damaged individuals walking your roads as a country, you can imagine the effect on the community. So it's very, very important that we have rape courts at this point. I am an advocate for that, and I think that it's critical that that is done. Lastly, I think as a community, we need to go on a campaign, and that campaign is a re-education of our people. And that re-education must be insensitive to religion, because in Nigeria, religion is actually an excuse for rape. It must be insensitive to religion. It must be insensitive to culture. It must be insensitive to tradition. The only thing it should be sensitive to is the protection of the victim. One of the considerations that have been proposed by the United Nations since 2008 is that your laws must be based on empirical evidence. They must be based on the things that are happening. So if our laws have to be as wide as men and women cannot move at 10 p.m. like we have with the coronavirus, then our laws have to go that far to ensure that the rape victim is protected. And I hope that you can still hear me. And
Yes, we heard you loud and clear, Yemi. I mean, thank you so much. I think you have definitely educated all of us on many things that we did not know about the laws and about even the differences between some of the laws, you know, in Lagos and in other states and all that. We have been very well educated, and I hope that we all take this up personally as something that we can speak to those that we know that are in influential positions about, because really, like you said, if the laws don't change, it's almost like, you know, we're just beating a dead horse. Thank you so much for all that insight. Okay, Jimmy, over to you.
First of all, let me say that I am deeply honored to be the only man among
We can't hear you very well.
a
bit louder, please.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, it's a bit better. But you might need to really project your voice.
How about now? Is this better?
Much better. Yes, thank you.
I was saying, first of all, I want to say it's deeply an honor to be the only male voice speaking amongst this wonderful women. I feel a bit intimidated, like, why, how did they pick me? But it's an honor to be here. First of all, I want to say that I'm going to be speaking on not all men take responsibility for gender-based violence through advocacy. Let me first start by saying that I feel like our society has failed us. And when I say failed us, I mean particularly the male child, particularly males. It is quite ironic that we live in a very misogynistic, patriarchal society. But the irony is it produces more responsible, mature women and irresponsible, entitled boys. And it's interesting when you look in the society and you see around you, there's so much male entitlement. I mean, from, you know, women being paid less to, I mean, typical example, I was driving down the street a couple of, I think it was like last year, and I heard a lady shouting out and she was asking for help. And I pulled over, wondering what was happening. And what had happened was her male driver had seized the keys to her car and insisted that he wasn't going to give it to her because he felt like he was disrespected. I mean, that's a simple case there. That's because he could do that because he felt she's a woman and I'm a man, right? Because he wouldn't do that if it was a man he was dealing with. So you see all these things, you know, popping up in our society. And what do I mean by society has failed us? Like I said, you have a lot of boys growing up being entitled and irresponsible. How does this happen? It starts in the framework of the family, as grooming men and women, boys and girls. You tell a boy that he is the head of the home, and because he is the head of the home, because he's a male child, he's the head of the home, so he doesn't have to do anything, just has to sit. And because he's a male child, everything works, right? You tell a girl that because she is going to have to be a woman, she has to learn how to keep her home, teach her responsibility, you teach her how to cook and clean, you teach her, you know, hard work, persistency, responsibility. And what happens is then you have women, girls who grow up to be responsible, driven women, and you have boys who grow up to be entitled and irresponsible. And so it ties down to this narrative of thinking because I am a boy or a man, you have men who are boys in their maturity, but they are physically grown in their body, but they're not matured in their mind. And that's what you see happen when it comes to talking about rape or any gender-based violence, is this sense of entitlement, where there's a feeling of, I am entitled to a woman's body, or I'm entitled to use my power or build my strength because. And what you hear a lot of the times in these narratives is you hear things like, well, she came over to my house, or, you know, what was she wearing? You know, why was she there? What attention was she pulling to herself? And these things, you know, reinforce this entitlement mentality. You know, one of the key things of being a man is to be able to take responsibility for the things that you do. But what you hear in these conversations is men trying to absolve themselves of the responsibility and do victim blame or shame and try to put it on the women. You know, and so for me, what's important for me is to correct that narrative, and us as men to take that stand to continue to correct this narrative and shed light on how people have used this idea to get away with absolute foolishness. I mean, I speak as a father, I speak as a brother. I grew up with a boy in between two girls, and it's the realization that we have to take responsibility for our actions. You know, it's as simple as no means no. It doesn't matter what she's wearing. It doesn't matter if she came to your house. It doesn't matter if she was in your room. You're not entitled to her body. You're not entitled to anything that her personal space, or, you know, anything that you feel that she has to offer. One of these times I'd seen a video that I thought was quite apt. It was a great illustration of the mentality that goes behind. It was a video of a baker, and he had baked this wonderful cake. And this lady happened to be coming out from the bathroom, and she saw this beautiful cake, and they had a conversation. She was asking him what flavor it was, and right before his eyes, she puts her fingers in and she grabs a big chunk of the cake and she begins to eat it. And the shock on the baker's face, he's thinking, why would you do that? And she said, it was your fault for making it so attractive. If you didn't want me to eat it, why'd you make it so attractive? And that's that behind this assault and rape, men saying, well, because she wore something, or because she did something, or because she came, that I was entitled, or it was my right too. And so it's important that we begin to change this narrative and begin to educate our boys from the time they are boys, to teach them responsibility, to teach them responsibility, and to teach them that entitlement is not just because you have male genitalia does not make you entitled to anyone. To teach them what it is to respect, honor our girls and our women, to teach them that as part of what it is to become a man and to be responsible in this society. I say this all the time, that every male perpetrator is a brother, is a son to a mother. And I think it's the highest form of disservice as a male who has come from a woman who has had the love of a mother or a sister or a cousin to, in whatever capacity, begin to, instill these damaging actions against our women in our society. And also, I think, educating, I think a part of culture and even religion has a play in this as well. How we teach our men to see our women. I strongly believe, and I guess I've been called a feminist many times, is the equality of women. Men are equal to men. I think that as much as you think that you're the head, and we say if a man is the head and a woman is the neck, if you think that you can exist without the neck, then take your neck out and see how effective your head is, right? To see that as a partnership, to understand that, true responsibility and power, is to honor and to protect rather than to oppress or suppress, So I think that for me, it's very important that every time I have an opportunity to have these conversations, we do. What we saw in Men Against Rape was we had a bunch of men who came together, put by the Mirabel Center, to take on a progressive stand, especially after the atrocities that we've heard. We walked all the way to the House of Assembly, and we spoke to the Lagos State First Lady, where we basically just let our voices be heard, and saying that we wanted to show men, that these are men speaking up. These are men who are standing, that saying that it is not okay to put a hand on a woman in whatever capacity. It's not okay to rape. It's not okay to abuse. And to see that not everybody has this mindset that because I am a man, it is okay, or because I am a boy, I'm entitled, or, let's lead by example. Let responsibility show in not what we say, but what we do. Because we're also responsible to build the framework for the next generation, because most people learn by not what we say, but by what we do. So I think for me, it's just important that we as men begin to raise boys to become better men. Me as men should speak out against it. We owe it to our maker. We owe it to the mothers that raised us. We owe it to the sisters and the cousins and the friends that we have, to the people who have played such an impact on our lives to be better, and to be men that our future sons can be proud of, and to be men that our mothers can be proud of, to be men that God can be proud of. So I think that's basically, just because of time, kind of where I stand and how I see it and what our role is as men in society today.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Thank you for highlighting all that you did. Thank you for focusing on education as well, and even on just, how boys are raised, males are raised. And thank you for also playing your part, in making sure that, I'm sure that men are raised better, and that men even become more aware of the reality of these issues and this whole entitlement problem that we have. Thank you very much for sharing with us. Temi, over to you, and then we'll do the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. And as Jimmy said, I am so honored to, be able to talk amongst you and also share my side and where I'm coming from. Because even hearing everyone speak today, again, every time I have these conversations, I'm learning new things. And it's important that I'm also coming from the standpoint of someone who doesn't necessarily work inside one of these organizations. So I'm coming kind of from that outside view. And every time I'm educating myself, and I think that's a really, really key part of, even if you don't think this issue affects you directly, there are people here who are watching, and they are learning facts and statistics and learning the work that, the amazing work that WARIF do. So firstly, thank you for having me. So I'm really coming today to speak from a social media and social activism standpoint. And I think sometimes we kind of undermine the power of what social media is today. So a lot of our youth, they get their news from Twitter. If an issue is important, to them. They're going to run to see the hashtag first. Or they're even finding out about situations that they wouldn't have even heard about if it wasn't a trending topic. So for example, when the stories of Uwa and Farishina and Barakat broke, a lot of people might not have even heard about these situations happening. And they happen, as Dr. De Silva said, every single day. But we actually had to have these single girls, these single tragedies told of these girls to have figureheads. And it seems like, sadly, it seems like every few years or every few months, the conversations are reignited. And maybe for a couple of weeks, it gets some heat on social media, the debate starts. But I think what's important is that that debate happens when it's not a trending topic. When people stop talking about it after 2 or 3 weeks, we continue to support the organizations who are doing the work every single day. Because when the hashtags aren't happening, there are still victims and there are still people who need their stories to also be told. But I do think that, having these single big stories come out reignites the debate. And for example, I think Jimmy mentioned the issue of victim blaming. So, when some of these stories come out, we do see the people on the other side who are saying, okay, well, why was she there? Well, men can't help themselves. So those people are now also getting into debates with people on the other side. So because those conversations are happening, people are not able to stay within their bubbles. Because sometimes, when we are on these platforms, we're not talking to people who see things on the other side. And they are also able to stay within their bubbles. So even though sometimes it feels like heads are butting each other, we need to be able to have these issues come out, and the people who might have these mentalities that we are trying to change, they are not able to come forward, blame a victim, and still get away with it, because we are able to have that rebuttal versus them not being online and they continue their whole lives thinking that whatever happens to a woman is her fault, for example. And also, we do have the issue that not everyone in Nigeria has access to Instagram and Twitter and hashtags. That is a big problem. People don't have 4G, but at least, again, in terms of, even me right now, I'm not in Nigeria, but I'm able to find out what's happening on ground. Maybe 30 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case, and we wouldn't have been hearing of all these stories. And victims who don't even feel like they have a voice are able to come out, have their voices be heard in some capacity. Maybe the law isn't even protecting them. There have been a few high-profile stories coming up of where the law hasn't necessarily done what they were supposed to do, but at least as a community, that victim might think, okay, well, at least I know that I'm not crazy, I'm right in this situation, because, us as a community have come together to support that person. So still, although not everyone has access to these discussions and communities, we are able to be joined online. So I think that's also really important. And also, just to raise the points that it's important to have these conversations online also, because it's not necessarily a popular topic. It is still very taboo in 2020 to talk about rape, to talk about child molestation. So, us bringing it out and public is forcing people to really face the issue head on. So maybe you're a 16-year-old boy and you're reading about consent and you're realizing that attitudes and situations you've been in the past are not okay. And that's purely based on you going on the WRF page and there's a student initiative and there's a student webinar, and you're now educating yourself in a way that you might not see in real life. So, we're also being open to new talks about consent, and people are less isolated in their opinions and their attitudes. And I think as someone who has somewhat of a public platform and has been working publicly with WRF, I think that digital activism is something that can be of really, really great importance. And if you have a platform, it's not always to, show positive things. You also need to bring awareness to the serious issues we have in society. And when I first started learning about this issue because of a film project that I was involved with earlier this year, it totally opened my eyes. So this is a situation that I'm still learning about, but it's, you know, once you kind of become aware to it, it's so hard to look away. The more you read the statistics, the individual stories, you realize that, okay, there might be a hashtag for a week, but I'm going to continue the work. And I really encourage other people who have public platforms to also come out and speak, because, you know, if you're a youth today, the people you're looking up to are your singers and your footballers and your actresses. You know, you're not necessarily following a politician on Twitter. Those are the people who are influencing your day-to-day life. So if those are the people who are coming out to speak on this, then you're going to actually reach our next generation of people who we hope will have changing mentalities about this.
We sure do.
Yes.
We sure hope they do. Yes, we
Exactly.
Sure hope they do. Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, just really quickly, I think sometimes you can become kind of disillusioned about what can I do personally, and that's why working with Warif and showing, okay, this is the groundwork that they do with the police, with counselors, with local communities, and, you know, here are the donation links. You know, some people are like, okay, so this is happening, how can I actually play a part? Keep on sharing it. If you have the means to do so, if you're in such a fortunate position, then donate. And I'm sort of that middleman right now between an amazing organization like Warif and the general public.
Great. Thank you so much, Temi. Thank you. Thank you for, you know, also inspiring us to use our platforms positively. You know, so all of us, nowadays, everybody actually has a platform, you know, almost everybody's on social media. So it's important that every single one of us uses whatever platform that we have positively to give the information as well, so that people know what needs to be done in all these different situations. Thank you very much. Thank you so much to all our wonderful panelists. Can we give them some virtual claps, please? Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you. I know that it was a bit tough to, you know, say so much, especially with the facts in a few minutes, but thank you so much for doing all that. You've really been really phenomenal. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the questions right now. So the first question that we have here is, what are the practical things that someone who has been raped should do? I know that the first instinct is to shower and scrub, but what should a victim do so that the perpetrator can be prosecuted? And any of you can take that, either Warif or Yemi. I know that you have insight into that.
So I think I'll probably take this one because of the work that we do at the Warif Rape Crisis Center. When you've had this awful, horrific attack, you're absolutely right. The first thing you want to do is shy away. You want to strip your clothes. You want to jump in the shower, and you want to stand in that shower forever. Unfortunately, when we look through the lens of being a forensic examiner, we're going to need to see you before you have a shower. We're going to need the clothing that you were wearing during the attack. Many of the specimens that we retrieve from you biodegrade after 72 hours. So if we don't have the opportunity of examining you within that window, unfortunately, we cannot effectively retrieve these specimens, send them to a DNA lab, and then confirm who your rapist is. So we urge women and girls and men that if you've sadly had this attack, please refrain from that knee-jerk reaction of jumping in the shower. Please immediately visit a Warif center or a center like ours. We're open 6 days a week, for example, and public holidays. We're available at the end of a phone if you're unable to reach us, so we can walk you through the steps of the best approach. And then it's also very important to remember that in addition to examining you, we're going to run tests on you. We're going to run HIV tests on you. And if I see you within a 72-hour window, I can administer post-exposure drugs that prevent the transfer of HIV. I can administer a pregnancy pill that prevents the risk of an unwanted pregnancy. So it's critical that we see you within that 72-hour window. And then you need someone like Bemi to talk to you. And Bemi is available again physically at the center or at the end of a phone, or we also have a live chat on our website. or as Temi said, our social media platforms where we have an active direct messaging system?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Da Silva. Okay, so the next question is for Gbemi. So this question is directed to Gbemi. How do you help someone who has been raped or sexually abused from getting into depression and also from blanking out loved ones completely?
Well, the thing is, the most important thing is just to show that you're available. Like I said, it's difficult for the loved ones around them because sometimes even the survivors themselves don't really know what they want or what they need at that time. But you have to be sure that you're not putting pressure on them. You want to make them know that I'm always here whenever it is that you need to talk. You don't want to monitor them 24/7 because they still need some form of control in their lives. So if you're constantly around them like a hawk, I know it's out of the love and care that we have, just wanting to be sure that everything is okay with them. Sometimes, yeah, you might think allowing them their space might actually push them further into depression, but you just want them to know that you believe in them in whatever decisions that they make at the end of the day. And you just keep saying encouraging words to them and be patient with them at the end of the day. If you can, encourage them once in a while. Like I said, they may just want to withdraw and not want to be around people. But if you can, encourage them just to go out sometime, just even to take fresh air. You don't necessarily have to go anywhere. Just let's go out and breathe in fresh air and just, even though there's not so much of fresh air around here in Nigeria, in Lagos, because of all the generators, exhaust and all of that, but just taking them out and allowing them to see the world and see that there's still more to life. Just be there, really. That's the bottom line of what I'm saying. Let them know that you're available. Eventually, they will come around. And please don't tell them, I mean, it's been how many months? Put yourself together. That just further worsens the situation. Once they know that you're available and that you care, trust me, they will come around sometime, but let it be at their own pace.
Thank you very much, Gbemi. So we put in the website of WARIF in the chat box for anybody that needs information. You could just go to warifng.org and all their social media handles are there and phone numbers are there for more information. Okay, so this next question is for Oyeyemi. Can some of the laws be changed? Because like you said, most of these laws don't grant justice to victims, or, you know, it just makes it more difficult. What can we do towards changing the law? Is there anything that you can suggest to us as to how we as citizens of Nigeria can actually work towards changing the laws?
Oh, yes, sure. The laws can be changed and the laws are changing. It's just that you have more responsive governments in certain places and those that are totally unaware of what's going on. I think the campaign, I mean, we don't need to go too far. The Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act that was passed in 2015 is progressive enough. If we do everything that that law says, I can promise that we would have a downward trend in rape incidences if it is enforced to the hilt. So I think the current campaign should be for the domestication of the BAP Act across all states in Nigeria. I hear that it was just recently domesticated in Bauchi, or there's steps being taken to domesticate in Bauchi. I think that more actively, that should be the campaign. The entire government, executive, legislature, should collaborate to ensure that the BAP Act is domesticated across board. If we do that, then we have a stronger law that can protect victims and does not hold them to standards that they cannot meet, you know, improving what has happened to them. So I think that would be the main recommendation. Let's domesticate the BAP Act across the 36 states, and then we have a good starting point.
Great. And what can we do towards helping to domesticate that law?
This is one thing that can be done. This is one thing that can be these sessions. And I think getting the stakeholders, so for domestication of laws, you'll be speaking to the State House of Assemblies. So those people are closer to us. Let's get them to know that there is a critical emergency, and nationwide, we need to using what Temi said, our campaigns, digital activism, if all of us are shouting VAP Act, VAP Act, VAP Act, I mean, a Bauchi state is not necessarily one of your quote unquote progressive states in Nigeria, but it must be that someone is sitting at that table and saying this is a critical action. And so we must make everyone realize that's why they have the offices, that's why they're representing us there. It's not a personal agenda, it's our agenda. So we need to step up as they say, citizens, and enter into our office as citizens of the nation and push for that to be done urgently. And I believe that if we have the VAP Act domesticated, we would have a better conversation.
Okay, so we all need to keep on using our voices and speaking to our State House of Assembly members and all those other lawmakers. Thank you. There's another question here for you, Yemi. How can a married woman who is being raped by her husband cope, especially with all the laws and all that people will say? How can she prove it? Even if she leaves the marriage, what can she do legally?
Okay, so before, there was nothing like marital rape under Nigerian law, but under the VAP Act, marital rape is actually recognized. Under the domestic violence law in Lagos State, marital rape is also recognized. And there are also other wide-ranging definitions that have been brought in. So it's not necessarily rape, but it's sexual assault, it's sexual battery, is battery, marital battery as well. So she needs to decide that I want this abuse to end, and then engage stakeholders like WARIF, stakeholders like the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency. Those agencies will walk her through that process. We've seen it happen time and again. They actually summon the husbands. They ask for the facts, they investigate the facts. Where necessary, they apply for and obtain court protection orders to ensure that the woman is separated from the man, especially when there is risk to her life. So there are solutions. I think the first thing, when I was wrapping up, I mentioned the rights that survivors have. A big issue is that survivors are not aware of the rights that they have. That right to report is actually your superpower, and you must exercise it, even if it is your husband. Strangers don't usually rape people. It's usually someone you know. So forget the proximity, forget the relationship, and protect yourself and engage all these agencies, and I'm sure you would find your response. And then in terms of the law, with all of this, with the VAP Act and the domestic violence law, you are even entitled to compensation. There's actually compensation provided under the law, under the VAP Act for rape victims. So if there's no other incentive, that compensation should even propel you to assert your rights.
So we really need to push for this VAP Act. We have to push for it. Yes. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like it has everything in it already.
It's a bird in hand. We will deal with all the other bigger issues later, but with this bird in hand, we can actually push for a better legal framework for protecting rape victims.
Thank you so much. Okay, so the next question is, all of this boils down to learning. Schools and families are the largest reaching structures that we have. What can we as normal people do to get curriculums changed? Organizations like WARIF can only do so much. What about education? What suggestions do you have as far as how we can get education out there, families, schools, and more?
Is that for me?
Anyone can take that.
Okay.
I can see Dr. Da Silva as well wants to say something, but start
30 seconds.
Yeah.
I think there's a psychosocial aspect to crime, right? If it is more difficult for me to do, I would hesitate to do it. And I think that is what the community should focus on, how we can exercise that and make people afraid to carry out those acts. Secondly, I think that as a community, the things that we endorse in our music videos, objectification of women, objectification of young children, ogling at women, all those things are endorsed. Our comedy is filled with it. Our movies are filled with it. All of those things those are the things that form our mental understanding of what is acceptable in society. You can't wake up in the morning, allow that, and then in the night say someone can go and rape someone. He's seen it. You've endorsed it in a video. You've endorsed it in a movie. You've endorsed it in a song. You've endorsed it in a community. An uncle is shouting, you're brought up is fine, when the girl begins, all those things, we need to communally come and push for those things to be eradicated. I think that's such a vital part of the conversation. Hello? Felicia?
I'm so sorry, I was muted.
Okay. Right.
Sorry, I was saying that I thought Dr. Da Silva wanted to say something as well about the education aspect. I may be buried, so I don't know. Do you have any tips for people? Because people want to know what they can do right now. Yeah.
So absolutely. So education is key. Education is the cornerstone of any change, any behavioral change, any change in an environment. When we talk about preventing gender-based violence, education is actually the cornerstone of what we represent with our educational programs. We take our educational programs to secondary schools because these are the more vulnerable groups. Children between the ages of 12 and 16 are the highest at risk, but they're also the highest group that are able to change their behavior. So if you're about to change the narrative of a young person's life, you have to educate them at that or during that period. And that's where our educational programs are so important. With tertiary schools, we change the narrative by addressing needs that are deeply seated, that sadly young people have probably dealt with for years on end. And then we start to bring into the public eye these problems like the sex for grades with lecturers and the need for safe spaces. As a community, I think more than education is appreciating that you have to create an enabling environment. And I think this is what Oyeyemi was alluding to. You need to make sure that you have a home where your child can come to you when an act of violence has been perpetrated upon her or him. That she or he are no longer afraid to walk in and say, Mom or Dad, this has happened to me. You need to create an environment where when a young girl is raped, she can come home and tell her friend without fear that the friendship circle will be divided. Or perhaps the male friends will tease her about going out in the evening. I say this all the time. Statistically, the highest percentage of rape happens in the afternoon. However, we spend so much time discussing the time of the day that women and young girls go out. And as Jimmy said, what she's wearing, at the Rape Crisis Center, the youngest child that I've had to examine is under the age of 2. She was in a diaper. And the oldest is 71. She was in a long wrapper. So what a girl wears, what space she's in, and who she's with has no precedence whatsoever in her being raped. Very simply, she's raped because she's dealing with a rapist. And if you have rapists, then rape occurs. So let's have a more enabling environment. Let's stop the survivor shaming. Let's create spaces, safe spaces, both on social media and physical safe spaces that women can come up and speak their truth. And the one other point I wanted to raise with regards to what Oyeyemi was saying about the law. Another important law that must be discussed very briefly is the Child's Right Act. The Child's Right Act is a law that has existed in Nigeria since 2003. Only 25 states across the federation have domesticated this act. And very simply, this act states that a child is legally under the age of 18. So it ties directly in with consent. If you don't have a law that protects a child, then sadly, you don't have consent, and therefore these acts will continue with impunity. So in addition to the VAP Act that have been domesticated in only 14 states, it's important that we raise attention to the Child's Right Act so that both laws can be cohesively domesticated across all 36 states. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Da Silva. Thank you for educating us on an additional law that we need to be pushing for. I'm sure that we're all taking notes. So that's the VAP Act and the Child's Rights Act. All right, so we only have time for one more question. I'm so sorry, everyone. We have so many questions, but we've even already gone over time. So this is for you, Jimmy. Somebody is asking if we should tell boys one thing about the issue of rape, what should it be? Also, men also get raped, but this is less reported. So men and boys also get raped, and this is less reported and talked about. Does WARIF support men and boys? That will be for the WARIF team. So over to you, Jimmy.
What is the one thing you would tell boys? Definitely, it's, I think, responsibility. I mean, teaching them responsibility, what it means to be a man, to be responsible. So I think it's taking responsibility for your actions. Responsibility, you cannot have entitlement, I think, and be responsible. You have to work for everything you have. It's your responsibility to provide, to protect any woman, any girl around you. That you know, so I think responsibility is one of the things that you push to the male child. And to disassociate their mind that because they have male genitalia that everything in life should be handed over to them. No. If you want to be treated as the head of the home, then act like the head of the home. If you want a woman to, your wife to submit to you, give her something to submit to. If you want to be somebody that's respected, show traits that are worthy of respect. So I think responsibility will be one of those things, and that means honoring everyone around you. So I think that would be the one thing I would teach the boy child, especially in today's society.
Thank you, Jimmy. And we hope that you are doing that with all the other men in your community. We hope that you guys are really, really pushing and really doing and teaching them that. All right, Dr. De Silva, so, and Gbemi, there was a question about boys as well, and the fact that boys being abused and raped is being underreported, and you know, we don't really talk about it. Can we have some insights into that, please? And does WARIF support them?
So boys are certainly also survivors of rape and sexual violence. When we talk about the statistics of 1 in 4 girls, it's actually 1 in 10 boys. So we're dealing with 10% of our population. And that in itself is a massive figure. Unfortunately, there are just not enough safe spaces and perhaps less organizations focus on the issues as it pertains to boys. We work with boys through the lens of education. As I mentioned, we're very big on establishing and implementing programs to change the narrative of young boys, because young boys that are socialized in homes of violence don't know any better. And so the chances of them growing up into becoming perpetrators is extremely high. And so we identify that if we're able to change their narrative at that young school age, then hopefully we reduce the number of cases of sex and domestic violence, because we have less of these young boys becoming perpetrators in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you so much to all our panelists. I'm sure that we are all filled with knowledge and information, and we're ready to go out there and do much better. Can we give them all a virtual applause, please? Thank you so much. Thank you, Temi. Thank you, Gbemi. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Yemi. And thank you, Dr. De Silva. Thank you so much. Can you all just give us a 1-minute closing statement? Very, very quickly. We will start with Yemi. So Yemi, Dr. De Silva, Jimmy, Gbemi, and then Temi. A 1-minute closing statement, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again to WARIF and Kuda, and thank you for moderating this beautifully. I think the only thing I would say is that we must all urgently take responsibility for it, using everything we have. All guns must be put in place, like everything has to be out there, legal reform, social reform, whatever it is. All of us must be town criers against rape. And the right to protect a child in Nigeria is not just the right of the parents of that child. You as a citizen watching can actually go and make reports for protection orders for those children if you see things like that happen. So let's all just get more aware of our rights and begin to use them for the benefit of all of us. And that's it. Thank you.
So I think very quickly, I'll piggyback on what Yemi just said. We all have an individual role to play in the fight against gender-based violence, and it's our collective responsibility to work towards ending the violence in our communities. I think finally, I would like to say to all survivors of rape and sexual violence, or if you know a survivor, please believe them. Take time, patiently listen, and believe them, and allow them to speak their truth. And please remember that WARIF is always here to help you. You're not alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jimmy?
Oh, sorry. Yes, so again, I think the key word is responsibility. Let every man take responsibility for his actions. Let us be responsible in any way we see abuse or oppression, let's speak against it. Let's be the men that honor our mothers, and honor God, and let's be the examples that let's show the examples we want to set for the next generation.
Thank you. Mimi?
Yeah, so I'll just speak to the survivors out there, just to let you know that this has happened, but it's not the end of the world. There's so much more ahead of you, and you don't have to go through it alone. Just like Dr. Da Silva said, we at WARIF are here to provide the emotional support that you need, and we assure you of full confidentiality, because I know that's another thing a lot of survivors are afraid of. They don't know if their story is going to be shared on Instablog Nigeria tomorrow. But we can assure you that that's not going to be the case at WARIF. So we're here for you, and just give yourself time. The healing journey is different for everyone. So move at your own pace, but know that you do not have to do it alone. You can always reach out to us, and you will definitely overcome this experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bemi. Temi?
I will just end by saying thank you, everyone. This has been an amazing panel webinar. And let's continue the fight. To all the victims who may be watching, we support you. We are here with you in this fight. And organizations like WARIF are here for you. They're here to support you. And as individual people, we need to continue to educate ourselves. We cannot look away. And, for example, we've talked about the Child's Rights Act. Like we know the things that we can actively be working on. So all because it seems like too big of an issue, we do what we can every single day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, once again. A round of applause for all our panelists. Thank you for the great closing statements. Thank you for all the tips that you have given us. Thank you for all the knowledge and information. I myself feel like I have been schooled on this topic. There are many things I didn't know, and now I know. And so I will be working quite hard as well to make sure that voices are heard. So let's all play our part and let's all use our platforms positively. So just in closing, let's remember that there is a Kuda Bank End Rape Fund that is in collaboration with all the organizations that are working against rape. So you can donate to, I'm sorry about that. You can actually donate to WARIF through the Stand to End Rape Fund, the Kuda Bank End Rape Fund. And the link is going to be posted in the box shortly, but it is endrape.kudabank.com. And let's all support WARIF and all the other organizations any way we can. All the links to WARIF have been put in the box as well. You can find them on your social media pages and on their website, warifng.com. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, WARIF. Thank you to all our wonderful panelists and all the attendees. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And please keep using your voice and your platforms positively to bring change to our society. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.